Welcome back, viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate you coming in and obviously tuning to this channel. My name is Patrick Tawia Matope. Tawia is my middle name. My channel is called Tawia Matope. I decided to use my middle name and my surname basically. If you are new to the channel, please do subscribe, hit that notification bell so that when I post, you'll be the first person to know. On this channel, I do deliver content on social work. It's just for me to be able to help one or two people who are starting in the profession or who may, be struggling to get some information concerning a few things within the profession. I do practice with children and families, so that's my bread and butter. So that's what I'll be delivering mostly on this channel. Like I said, if you're new to the channel, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell so that when I post, you'll be the first person to know. And I just want to put a disclaimer as well to say I don't consider myself a guru in social work, but I do deliver content on this channel out of my own, volition, wanting to benefit somebody else. And for my own self-directed learning, really, it doesn't necessarily mean that I know everything. If you wanna, start a conversation concerning things that I would have delivered here that you wanna correct, please do so in the comment section so that we can start a conversation going. At the end of the day, the aim is to educate others and to be able to impart the skills and the knowledge to others, really, basically. So in today's topic, it's a request to one of my viewers who asked me to deliver another video concerning UASC, what we call unaccompanied asylum seeking children, UASC in short, as in UASC, as an abbreviation. This will focus mostly on, in England and Wales, where I've practiced. I haven't practiced in other parts of the UK. I've only practiced in England and Wales, basically. So I'll just give a bit of statistics as of 2024. I can't give 2025 statistics, but I don't think those stats are out yet. But these stats I'm giving you are as of 2024. Then I'll also move to, giving an understanding of why unaccompanied asylum seeking children actually come to the UK and some of the challenges that are faced by social workers who are working with unaccompanied asylum seeking children, basically. And then I will also talk about the common routes that they use when they're coming to the UK. This is not in any particular order as such, but these are just, remember, I always talk about nuggets from my own experiences and from my own self-directed learning, but some of this is mostly from my own experience of having worked in a looked after children's team. And I'll also give brief tips on how best you can engage unaccompanied asylum seeking children to get the best out of your engagement with them. And I'll also talk about what it is that they're entitled to when they come into the country. What is it that needs to be done when you're working with unaccompanied asylum seeking children, really? And after they reach the age of 18, what really happens with them, and what are some of the key issues that one needs to consider when engaging with unaccompanied asylum seeking children, mostly related to their families or family contact, or what we call family time these days. And I'll also give just a few reflections on what I think works best when engaging with them, basically. And basically that's it in today's topic. So let's start by jumping straight into the stats. So with regards to unaccompanied asylum seeking children, as of 2024, we I think my research show tells me that we had about 5,570 unaccompanied asylum seeking children in the whole of England and Wales. That was as of 2024. This was an increase of from 4,900 as of 2023. So that's a huge number. That's a big number if you look at it, really. These are spread across all the local authorities in the country. Remember, the Home Office has got the dispersal scheme where most of them, they do come through the coastal areas, like for example Dover and so forth. So Kent, for example, Kent County Council won't be able to take all of the unaccompanied asylum seeking children. So the Home Office then utilizes the method which they call the dispersal method, where they will post some of these unaccompanied asylum seeking children to other local authorities, and they have a duty to be taking them in and supporting them as looked after children, just like any other looked after child in the UK. Remember, I spoke about in some of the videos about children defining children from birth up until the age of 18 is still regarded as a child. But remember, when you are looked after child by the local authority, you will still be looked after up until the age of 25, or that is if you are not in any education or any form of training. But if you're in education or some form of training, say for example you are training to be a medical doctor and it takes you 7 years, then those 7 years you will still be your needs will still be taken care of, and you will still enjoy services of living care support teams basically. I'm talking about the nationalities now, where most of these unaccompanied asylum seeking children come from. We are talking of Syria, mostly. We are talking of Afghanistan. We are talking of Sudan, mostly South Sudan, and sometimes the normal Sudan, because we know that there is war there. We are talking of the Palestine territories. They are also coming through to the UK. We are talking of Eritrea. We are talking of Western Sahara, Mauritania, Iran. We are talking of Iraq. We are talking of Albania, Vietnam. We are talking of Syria. I spoke about Syria already. Those countries do make up the largest group of unaccompanied asylum seeking children. It doesn't necessarily mean that you won't see unaccompanied asylum seeking children from other territories of the world. You will find them, but I'm talking about the majority of them, or the large numbers, come from those specific countries which I've mentioned already. You can Google online, you will find all this information. It's not privileged information as such. And talking about the genders of unaccompanied asylum seeking children, mostly 90%, if not 95% of them are male. I don't know why it's like that. I don't want to speculate. I may know that some of the reasons why it's like that, because obviously it's a perilous, dangerous journey which they take, and obviously it's mostly males who may be having the guts to actually undertake that journey. But I also don't want to generalize stuff, so go and research about it. But the stats indicate that 90, if not 95% of those unaccompanied asylum seeking children will be male, mostly between the ages of 14 up until 17. Between the ages of 14 up until 17. You will also find a few 13-year-olds there, but it's mostly from the age of 14 up until the age of 17. Right. Conveniently, some of them will tell you I'm 17 years old, even if when you see them, you can tell this person may not necessarily be that age, but they will tell you I'm 17 years old, because they know that once you say you're 17, you are regarded as a child, and you will be treated as a child up until a point where possibly an age assessment has been done, something like that. I spoke about the dispersal method which the Home Office uses. Obviously, local authorities which have got airports like Birmingham, Hillingdon, which has got Heathrow, or Kent, or West Sussex, which has got Gatwick, won't be enough to take all unaccompanied asylum seeking children. So the Home Office then uses the dispersal method to prompt them to send them to other, boroughs or other local authorities, to make sure that they are spread across the whole of England and Wales as well. Why do they like to come to the UK? That's one of the most pertinent questions each one of you may ask. They often choose to come to the UK because of a combination of factors, which, if you look at it really, you will understand why they usually want to come to the UK. As we know, UK colonized almost, if not half of the world, basically some years back. And because of that, most of those colonized countries, they do speak English by virtue of having been colonized by the UK at some point. And English would be one of the easiest languages that they do speak. So because of that affinity to be speaking English, most people actually prefer to come to the UK because of the language. And for them, I think for most, people from other countries, it's easier to learn language, to learn English than French, for example. It's easier to learn English than German, for example. So that's why mostly they come to the UK. However, another factor which, research tells us is that it's also to do with family and community links, which are already in the UK. As you know, there's a large, population from Syria, for example, and a distinguished population from other countries like Iran, Iraq, and so forth, Afghanistan, Pakistan, and all those other countries. There will be already an established family links or relations who are already in the UK. That's why sometimes they prefer coming to the UK. I spoke about English being a familiar language or an aspiration for them to be speaking English. So that also pulls them to come to the UK, for example. And sometimes perception about safety, they have, this perceived idea that possibly they will be safer in the UK. And they also think that the asylum seeking process is quite fair in the UK. Those are some of the things which research tells us why, unaccompanied asylum seeking children end up in the UK, on the shores of the UK. And I think it's also fairly easy to come to the UK, for example, though it's quite expensive. As you know, if we may have seen on YouTube some videos where, we talk about people paying large sums of money to be able to come to the UK. However, there is also another reason which most people that prefer coming to the UK, because they believe that they have better access to education, healthcare, and human rights. It's respected as compared to possibly any other country that they may think of. And I spoke about historical ties. Most of some of these countries may be former British colonies at some point, so they've got some historical ties to wanting to come to the UK, because when you think about moving to another country, you start to think about a country where it will be easier for you to converse, where it will be easier for you to navigate, for example. And sometimes diaspora communities create what we call push factors or pull factors, really. Push factors, basically. Some diaspora communities create what we call pull factors. When they see some other people from their country who are in the diaspora doing well in the UK, it's easy for them to start to think, okay, fine, I should go to the UK. Or if they see them doing well in the US, they must think, what, it's easier for me to go to the US. But as you can see, with the stance that Trump is taking and all that, it might not be the most ideal thing for them to be imagining or thinking about going to the US, for example. So the easiest option would be to think about coming to the UK. I'm just putting it out there as an example, really. Right. What are the most common routes that the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children use to come to the UK? Most of these routes, like I said earlier on, they are quite perilous journeys, very dangerous and irregular journeys, really. So they both use land and sea crossings, through Europe, often or oftenly via Calais in France, and then they end up, on the shores of the UK. It's mostly through small boats. That's what they use to cross the English Channel, which is, a growing and hazardous route at the moment. As you can see on news, almost every other day, they talk about statistics of people arriving on the shores of the UK, via small boats. Some of the unaccompanied asylum-seeking children will be on those boats. That's the reality of how these things are like at the moment. Some of them, they do, hide in lorries, freight containers, and sometimes on foot, or they, store away in planes. We have heard about cases where, even adults do store away on planes, and then they just alight when they realize that they've reached possibly Gatwick or Heathrow or any other airport, and then they find their way. There are also people smugglers who are also into this dangerous trade, where they are exploiting these children and exploiting families, and some may end up being trafficked en route to come, and then they end up in the UK. So those are some of the common routes that they usually use to find themselves here. And then I'm coming to the few tips which I'm going to give you on how best to engage unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, basically. We need to be mindful that they are often traumatized, mistrustful, vulnerable, and they are a bit at the edge whenever you are trying to engage them, because they actually think that in as much as you can try to be positive and working with them, they always try to think that you are there to seek information and discredit them in the application to the Home Office. So they'll give you the least amount of information as possible. So what I used to do when I was working in the LAC team was to make sure that my first visit with them, I put my cards on the table and say to them, look, I am a social worker. I'm not a Home Office officer. I don't work for the Home Office. I don't work for any other agents that deals with immigration, but I'm a social worker. I'm here to help you. And the information and answers you give me are going to help you to plan the way forward and plan how best I can support you. So you need to be able to do that as well. And that's how you build your trust with them. But I remember that building trust with them is going to be a slow and arduous process, because like I mentioned already, they are traumatized, they are mistrustful, they are quite vulnerable. So trauma, fear of authority, and previous abuse that they may have suffered may make this a difficult thing for you to build trust with them. Moving on to point number 2 is it's important for you to be using interpreters carefully and making sure that you don't leave anything to chance. You need to be ensuring consistency, neutrality, and sensitivity. If you feel that the interpreter you are using is not doing justice to the questions that you're asking, then you need to be reminding them of their job or change them straight away. Don't dilly-dally with this, because you end up in a situation where you have got, an unaccompanied asylum seeking child, not knowing exactly what, their rights are, or not knowing exactly what needs to be done, or you are actually, processing a wrong assessment at the end of the day, really. And then another point is to, be culturally attuned to the needs of unaccompanied asylum seeking children. If you are not clear, ask them or ask other colleagues that you work with, and they'll be able to guide you exactly on what you need to do in terms of understanding their cultural norms, taboos, and behaviors. Those are some of the things that you need to be attuned to. And then point number 4 is to think about stability and routine. Offer stability and routine to make sure that they get into a consistent routine. FY consistent placement, school and support structures which will be in place to support them as they acclimatize and start a new life in the country. So you need to be able to afford or to offer them stability and routine. By doing so, you gain their trust and you'll be able to build that trust slowly as time goes on. Think about life story work, which needs to start straight away as they come into the country. Things may change, they will change their vision, they will change whatever they'll be telling you, but it's important for you to capture those first few moments and be able to capture all that they're telling you, working towards building their life story, which will help them process their trauma. It doesn't only help them process their trauma, but it also maintains their sense of identity and helps them to identify with, with their culture or with their religion and stuff like that. And by so doing as well, down the line, if they give you a different version from what they've told you already, because you've captured it already, you are able to quickly challenge them on whatever they're telling you, and you're able to collaborate nicely with other agents that you need to collaborate with. And the other important thing to be mindful of is to think about the specialist mental health support services that you can put in place early on. Think about CAMS. Many may have suffered PTSD along the way, post-traumatic stress disorder. You need to think about that. Some of them may be suffering from high anxiety. You need to be thinking about that. How best can you support them going forward? So you need to also think about specialist mental health support services. And you also need to understand the asylum seeking process yourself as an individual. If you're not sure of what the asylum seeking process is like for unaccompanied asylum seeking children, go online, research, attend the training, attend webinars which are offered. There are many webinars which are there online. Attend training within your organization, which will actually help you navigate this practically, and kind of a difficult maze of specialist kind of support that you need to be offering to them, and making sure that you're emotionally attuned to their needs as well. You need to be guarding against trafficking and re-trafficking of these children, because it can still happen even if they are in the UK. For example, they may have been trafficked from wherever they come from, and they will be told, whatever you get, if you get £1,000, 800 should be mine. You only remain with £200. So you need to be opening your mind to those kind of things as well, because they can still be re-trafficked even locally in the country. So you need to be alert to all the signs of possible trafficking, all the signs of possible child exploitation, because it also happens with unaccompanied asylum seeking children as well. With those tips, I think it has helped you as well. Moving on to what it is that they are entitled to. So remember, the entitlements of children who are looked after by the local authority also is applicable to unaccompanied asylum seeking children. The only difference will be that in terms of Section 20, the local authority assumes the role of the parent only because there is no parent already who is there to play that parental responsibility. So their provisions or things that they are entitled to is covered within the Children's Act of 1989, as well as the Living Care legislation. Whilst they're under the age of 18, they are entitled to accommodation under Section 20, which is voluntary care. They're also entitled to a social worker, especially if they're below the age of 16, and they're entitled to a care plan and to a personal educational plan, what we call a PEP. And then they're also entitled to access to education, healthcare, dental services, and therapeutic services. You need to be mindful about that. They're also entitled to legal support services and interpreter services, especially if they are unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, as they will be launching their asylum claim, or they will need facilitation for their asylum claim with the Home Office. So you need to make sure that they're entitled to all those things. And obviously, we talk about their support for their asylum application with UKVA, which is our UK visas and immigration department, as well as to legal aid basically. And after they reach the age of 18, they will be entitled to almost similar things. But remember, they will be then moving on to the living care team at some point there, and they will be eligible to all the living care support plan that can be given to any child who will be looked after by the local authority. This will be according to the Children's Act of 2000, or the Living Care Act, which is which might call the Living Care Act. They'll be entitled to a personal advisor, but upon reaching the age of 16, they will be entitled to what we call a pathway plan in the housing support plan, which will help them to transition when they turn 18 to be an adult, so that they can access suitable housing, and also some bit of financial support, which they will be entitled to depending with their immigration status. Once the asylum has been looked at and it has been approved, then they'll be entitled to some financial form of support basically. And then some of the key issues that you need to think about when you are dealing with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children is with regards to the separation trauma that they would have suffered, and thinking about them having no contact with family, and sometimes not even knowing where their family is. Some of the stories are genuine stories, which makes you think, what, you're actually much better off, in a position where you are in, as compared to what some of them will be going through. So you need to be open-minded when you're working with them. Think about the separation trauma. Some of them would have PTSD exactly, and sometimes they'll also be fearing for their own safety, and contacting their family may be risky. So you need to be guided by them in terms of how that goes forward, because some of the families may still be in conflict zone, and if the communication is being monitored from their country of origin, then they might put their parents, or they might put their family members at risk basically. Emotional conflict, sometimes they will also feel guilty for being in a safe country, whereas their primary family or family members are in a conflict zone, for example. So you need to think about that as well. And sometimes they also feel confused. They may not think that they are still safe in this country, or they may still be wondering where my family is. So there are lots of things going on with them emotionally and physically as well, sometimes mentally as well. So you need to think about all those kind of things. Some have lost all contact information with their families, so you need to think about ways of how you can engage with Red Cross or any other organizations that will actually help them to retrace their family. There is other organizations like Family Connectors who can actually help them to connect with their families. And there are also some issues, what we call cross-border social work, complex issues which might be going on as well, in terms of tracing their family members, or organizing contacts, which requires consular support from the embassies, or legal input, or sometimes it could be a safeguarding issue where you need to be thinking that you need to be safeguarding them from what they ran away from, and yet they don't see it that way themselves as unaccompanied asylum-seeking child. They may not see that they need to be safeguarded from what they ran away from. Then obviously there's issues around legal and immigration issues, and sometimes at some point they may start to need to think about family reunification, which may be restricted because of the delayed immigration, issues as well. So it's kind of a balancing act that you need to be playing there. And then there are also cultural pressures, expectations from family overseas for them to send them money, pressures for them to succeed, and also which can cause a strain on them, which can cause an emotional toll on them as well. So those kind of pressures as well will need to be taken into account when you are, engaging them. How best can you support, unaccompanied asylum-seeking children? Approach them from a strength-based approach. You need to identify what are the strengths that they possess already at the moment that you can capitalize on to make sure that they remain resilient survivors of whatever they've survived, but they don't see themselves as victims only, but they're also survivors. And from that strength-based approach, you'll be able to motivate them to continue to do better, really. And remember, trauma-informed practice that you need to practice when you are working with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children. You need to understand how trauma affects an individual, how trauma affects them as children, because remember, they're also at a point where their brains haven't developed that well, but they've already faced this level of trauma, and they may have attachment issues, developmental issues, so they may not easily attach to the foster carers that you're going to pair them with. They may not attach to the children in the school that you're going to be sending them, or they may not necessarily take well to some of the children that you're sending them to. And remember, issues to do with age as well, where you think that they're 17 and you are having perception of thinking that they're above that because they grow beard quickly and so forth. All those kind of things you need to be mindful about. It's kind of a minefield on its own in terms of practice in this area, but with guidance and support from your colleagues, you should be able to do better, really. And if there are specific questions that you may want to ask around this topic, please put your comments in the comment section below, and I'll be able to look into that in the next videos or something like that. But if you have anything else that you want to share in terms of working with or engaging with unaccompanied asylum-seeking children, put your comments in the comment section below and keep them neat and simple so that everybody else can be, it can be palatable to everybody else. Thank you so much for tuning. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe, hit the notification bell so that when I post, you'll be the first person to know. I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.